This week, we're taking a look at more of the changes coming to Warhammer 40k 10th edition. We actually have some news about the old world, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are fighting zombies. All this and more in this week's Hobby News. I'm Angela, you're watching Hobby Night. Now let's get to it. Last week, we got a little bit of a hint that characters might be behaving differently in Warhammer 40k 10th edition, and this time, Games Workshop has confirmed it, and I want to go ahead and talk about some of these changes because I actually think I really like the way that characters behave now. Now, previously in Warhammer 40k, the way that characters worked is they would have aura abilities, and any units that were eligible, that were within range, would be affected by these aura abilities, and they'd end up creating some really powerful units, which weren't always the most fun to go up against. Now, they may have been fun for the people running it, but I don't know. I just felt like sometimes we got some super powered units because of all these various aura abilities from these characters, and it was problematic. But that is not how things work anymore. In fact, aura abilities are pretty much going to be completely gone. Now, there will be some exceptions, but you can see a severe reduction in them going forward. Now, how are characters going to be behaving differently then? Well, they're going to actually be able to join units. And this feels a bit more realistic, and I actually really like the idea of it. So how are you going to know whether or not a character can actually join a unit, and what are they going to be able to do? Well, what they're going to be able to do is dependent on the character, and they'll enhance the units in some various ways, and I'm sure Games Workshop is going to reveal a lot more of that going forward. But how you'll actually be able to know if they'll join a unit is if they have the leader ability. This is going to mean that they can join a particular unit, and the units that they can join are going to be listed on their data sheets. Now, the example that we got in this reveal was the Primaris Lieutenant. And if you look at what Games Workshop has showed us, this Primaris Lieutenant can join 6 different Space Marine units, but 2 of those are currently redacted. I suspect these units are going to be ones we're going to be able to see coming at Warhammer Fest as they reveal more of what's coming in the starter set box, and I, for one, am looking forward to seeing what we're going to be getting. Now, the Primaris Lieutenant is a little bit unique in regards to characters because unlike a lot of the characters that you'll be seeing, he can actually join a unit that another character has already joined, specifically either a captain or a chapter master. Now, there are going to be other characters for other factions that can also do this, so it's not just a Primaris Lieutenant thing, but I do like seeing this rule specifically for this character because Games Workshop has given us tons and tons and tons of Primaris Lieutenants, and so it's really nice to see that we can actually use them all and just throw them into various Space Marine units to help buff them and make it so that we can actually bring all of those units that we've had to buy over and over and over again. So overall, I'm actually really excited for how characters seem to be different. I'm looking forward to learning more about them and actually seeing how this works in game, but I'm very optimistic of this change because it really does feel a little bit more realistic, and I like the tactics that I think are going to come into play with this new abilities. We've talked about how characters are going to be different, but now I want to talk about how weapons are going to be different as well, because we learned that weapons are no longer going to be categorized the same way that they were previously. In fact, all of those categories like assault, heavy, rapid fire, etc. are now going to be considered weapon abilities, and they're going to behave a little bit differently. And we got a really great example of exactly how this is going to make weapons going forward in the game a lot more flexible, and I like it. So we all know how the Primaris often have a lot of bolt rifles, but there's some slight variation in them. Well, now it doesn't matter which bolt rifle you built your miniature with. If it's got a bolt rifle, it can run both the assault or heavy abilities, which means that you as a player then get to decide whether or not you want to keep your guys running forward and still firing on the enemy, or if you want them to stay stationary and get a little bit more accuracy. I love this flexibility, and I think it's going to do a lot for weapons in the game. Now, Games Workshop went over a variety of other new abilities for weapons, including Devastating Wounds, which is a nice one that allows you to get some mortal wounds when you hit a critical hit. So if on an unmodified 6, you basically get a mortal wound, that's really nice. You also have Melt X, which allows you at half range when fighting with that weapon to increase the damage characteristics by X. And then you also have Sustained Hits X, which again allows you to add X number of additional hits when using an ability when you score a critical hit. So that is really cool. There's a lot of new abilities, and I'd highly encourage you to go check out the full article to see all the changes that are coming, because Games Workshop did go into a variety of different details, also describing which models might be seeing some of these abilities, which was lovely to see. Overall, I am really liking what we're seeing when it comes to the changes for 10th edition, and I'd love to know your thoughts on it down below. Do you like what we're seeing with the characters and how they get added to a unit now? Are you liking these new weapon abilities? Let's discuss it below. We have a brand new Terminator, and it is a librarian Terminator, and I actually think he looks majestic. I think my favorite thing about this new model that Games Workshop has revealed to us as we continue to get more information about 10th edition is just the engravings on this model's armor. I think it adds so much more variety to the model. He looks so cool, and honestly, it reminds me a little bit of Chaos. It just, there's a little bit of a Chaos vibe to it, and I really enjoy that. I'm definitely going to be picking up this particular Terminator. I expect we'll actually be able to get him in the new box set that's coming out for 10th edition, so I anticipate getting him then. We have an official release date for Warhammer 40k Boltgun, which is a first-person shooter that looks very Doom-like, and I'm very excited for this coming out. Now, you'll be able to get your hands on it, and I'll be able to get my hands on it beginning May 23rd. This is coming to us from Auroch Digital and Focus Interactive, and I've talked about this a little bit, but for once, Games Workshop has actually been talking about this game on Warhammer Community, which blew my mind because I swear they very rarely talk about their video games on the community site, which bothers me because they make some really cool video games that I think deserve a lot more attention. But the reason they were talking about it this time is actually because of who is playing the main character in Boltgun. It is none other than Raul Coley, which some of you may know from iZombie or Midnight Mass, but I actually recognize him from YouTube because he's been on done collaborations with Funhouse before, and that's actually where I first learned of him, and I think he is hilarious, and I cannot wait to hear him in this game. He is a big Space Marine fan, so him getting to play this role is especially cool, and I always like seeing when fans of the franchise get to actually work on products within the franchise, so this is just really awesome to me. I am definitely going to be playing Boltgun once it is out May 23rd on the channel, so you can be looking forward to that. And if you want to get your hands on it as well, you can play it on either Steam, the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, or Xbox Series One, whichever one that you have, and you'll be able to get it May 23rd. I cannot believe that we've actually gotten some legitimate news about Warhammer Old World. This is something that Games Workshop has been talking about for years and years about how they want to bring the old world back, but I feel like we've not really gotten a huge amount of relevant information about it. They've shown a few snippets of what some of the models may be looking like, but just showing details, not really going into anything that I think is really gonna get people excited or hyped to get back into the old world. But now we're actually getting a little bit more concrete information. Now it's small, it's talking about the base sizes and the scale of the miniatures, but this is actually relevant to the game and talks a little bit about tournaments, which I think is very interesting that we're already discussing this, even though we've really not seen a whole lot about the game. So what did they talk about when it comes to the base sizes and scale? Well, when it comes to the base sizes, we are still getting our square bases. So all of you folks who are wanting those square bases back, don't worry, those are still coming. But you might notice in some of the pictures that the bases look a little bit larger. Well, that's because they are. They have in fact scaled up the bases. Now, a lot of this is just due to the fact that they're wanting to do more dynamic poses, and some of the 90s and aughts models were a little bit harder for them to scale up, and they're trying to correct that now by just giving bigger bases. But do not worry, because the actual miniatures themselves are still going to be in line with the old Warhammer Fantasy models, which I'm really excited for, because to me, this means that people who collected the old world material before it had gone away are going to be able to use all of those existing armies. You got a full, beautiful Bretonnian force? Cool, you can still use them. You got a vampire counts or tomb kings? You can still use those. Now, where there is going to be a little caveat here is the fact that because we are going to larger bases, if you're wanting to run these models in an official tournament, you may end up needing to rebase them all, which is a little bit painful. I know that can be well, I've already said it, painful, but it is at least something. You can still play them casually on the existing bases, but if you want to go into the tournaments, you might want to consider rebasing everything. And of course, Games Workshop is going to have bases for you to buy, but there's also plenty of companies out there that already expand bases out, so it might be worthwhile to look into some of those if you're wanting to use your existing army in tournaments going forward. Last week we talked about Zombicide White Death and how that had come to Kickstarter, and it was going back into the medieval fantasy version of Zombicide, which had me very excited. Well, this week, Cool Mini or Not has announced an expansion for the game that you can add as an add-on for $50, and it is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle expansion, which you might be going, wait, why are the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in a medieval fantasy world with zombies? It doesn't matter. Time travel shenanigans. It's all fun and games. I really like the looks of these, honestly. The turtles are done up in historical sort of samurai-esque outfits, which looks amazing. But the actual characters that got me the most hype were obviously Splinter. He looks badass. We have Casey Jones in an amazing mask that just looks stunning. However, April looks the best. She is so cool. I really want this model. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. I'm loving all of the miniatures. Shredder also, of course, looks stunning, is also in samurai armor, amazing. And then we've got a bunch of Foot Clan as well, or the Foot Ninjas. So you've got all of your classics in here, but they're done up in sort of a medieval style Asian fantasy, which I think works perfectly for the White Death scenario, as it is an official expansion for the game. If you're wanting to grab this, as I mentioned, it is going to be a $50 add-on, which you can get through the Kickstarter, but I assume it will also become available once the game has launched officially into your friendly local game stores and onto retail shelves elsewhere after the Kickstarter is over. I, for one, am probably going to be looking into getting this one once it is out on retail shelves, but the Kickstarter is still available for roughly 8 more days, so if you want to go ahead and secure it early, this would be the time to do it. All right, that has been it for this week in hobby news. There is a lot to discuss, so make sure to head down to the comments and let me know what you thought was the most interesting. I am in particular excited about the new 40k rules. 10th edition is sounding very interesting, and I am optimistic that it's going to draw me back into the game. So I'm very, very pleased about that. Now, before I do head out, I do want to give a huge shout out to my patrons for making it so content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we would not be doing this, so thank you very, very much. I have been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night.